Look at her. This small chicken, this one that looks like a wet rat, is the one I am supposed to sit here and call mom? Selam, lower your voice. For what? Nobody in this country speaks French. She is younger than me. Younger! And she owns all of this? You think a girl builds a company by working? No. She found a rich old man, she smiled and waited for him to die, then she collected everything. That is the only way. And now I must call her Ma.
At the desk, the young woman finished signing her name. She did not turn around, not yet, but she had heard every word. And what Selam could not have imagined, not in 100 years, was that the woman she had just called a wet rat understood French as clearly as she understood her own heartbeat. Her name was Aida, and in a few minutes she was scheduled to interview the very girl now dragging her name through the mud. This is the story of how Selam talked herself out of the biggest opportunity of her life in a language she thought was a secret. But before we get to what Aida did when she finally turned around, you need to understand how a girl who came from nothing came to own everything. Because Selam was right about one thing, Aida did get her fortune from an old man. She was just completely, painfully wrong about how. Aida had been selling things since before she understood what business was. As a child, she was the girl who always had something to trade. If she bought 2 pencils and a classmate needed one, she sold the second and made her small profit. If her mother sent her for bread, she came back with the bread and a plan to buy 2 loaves next time and sell one to the tired neighbor who never went to the market. She simply saw the world the way traders do, full of small chances most people walk past. Her mother used to laugh and shake her head. "This girl, you will either become very rich or you will sell my roof from over my head." But there was no shortcut waiting for Aida. Her father had passed when she was young. Her mother cleaned classrooms in a secondary school and came home with aching feet. There was no uncle abroad sending dollars, no family land waiting, no beauty that stopped traffic. There was only Aida, her 2 hands, and a stubborn refusal to sit down and wait for pity. And there was one more thing about her, something you could not see by looking. Aida had met people like Selam many times, girls who were angry that she smiled at strangers, angry that people liked her, angry the way some people are angry at the sun for shining on a day they wanted dark. She had learned very early never to shrink herself so that bitter people could feel tall. She let her work speak. She never argued with someone who had already decided to hate her. She just remembered them, and she waited. The day that changed her life did not look like it would change anything. She was 19, cutting through a narrow alley with a bag of the notebooks she sold to students when she heard the laughing. Not the happy kind, the kind with cruelty underneath it. At the end of the alley, an old man had fallen. He was on the ground, one hand pressed to the concrete, trying to push himself up and failing. His glasses had slid down his nose, his agbada was streaked with dust, and 3 teenage boys circled him like they had found a toy. "Hey, Baba, are you blocking the road? Look at him, he cannot even stand. Should we help you, old man, for a small fee?" They laughed. One of them nudged his shoe with a foot. Most people would have walked faster. A girl alone had every reason to keep her head down and pass. Aida did not pass. "Hey!" Her voice cracked across the alley like a slap. "Have you people lost your minds? That could be your own grandfather on the ground. Are you not ashamed?" She kept walking straight at them, bag in hand, fury in her eyes, and something about a person who is not afraid makes cowards remember what they are. "We were only playing," one muttered. "Play somewhere else, now, before I start shouting and this whole street comes to see the big men beating an old man." They scattered. Boys like that always scatter. They are only brave against the weak. Then it was just Aida and the old man. She knelt, put her bag down in the dirt without a thought, and slid her arm behind his back. "Baba, I have you. Slowly, lean on me." He was shaking and embarrassed, the way a proud old man is when he is found on the ground. "Thank you," he said quietly. His voice was deep, educated, careful. "I left my cane at home this morning. I thought my legs would remember to be young. They did not." "Where do you stay? You cannot walk alone. Let me take you." He looked at her for a long moment. this girl who had dropped her own goods in the dirt to lift a stranger. "You are very kind. Most people would have walked past." "Most people did," she said simply, and picked up her bag. His name was Mr. Cooker. She walked him home, and there she saw the thing that broke her heart a little. Mr. Cooker lived in a big house, beautiful once, high walls, a wide compound, the kind of home that told you the man who built it had done well. But inside, it was too quiet, too clean the way a place is clean when no children run through it. On the wall hung a photograph of his late wife, and others of grown children, well-dressed, smiling in front of buildings that were clearly not in the country. "My children," he said, seeing her look, "one in London, one in Canada, one in America. They are doing very well. They call when they can." He said it with pride, and under the pride, something else. He did not say how rarely those calls came. The silence in that house said it for him. Aida made him tea that day. She did not have to, she just did. And she found herself thinking about him on the walk home, the old man alone in that big empty house, waiting for a phone that rang once a month if he was lucky. So she came back. It was not a strategy. She was simply the kind of person who, once she knew someone was lonely, could not unknow it. She passed by after selling her goods, bringing small things, oranges, ground nuts, a newspaper. She sat with him in the evenings when the light turned orange and then blue, and she listened. And Mr. Coker had a great deal to teach. He had been a serious businessman in his day, import and export back when it was harder than it is now. He traveled. He spoke French and a little German. He knew real history, the kind that is not in the textbooks. And in this sharp, hard-working girl who sold notebooks and never complained, he saw himself when he was young. "You have the instinct," he told her once, watching her count her small profit. "Sit, let me teach you." And over the months and then the years, he did. He taught her business, the patience and the margins and the logistics. He taught her French, correcting her accent gently, until one evening she spoke it back to him fluently and he clapped his old hands with delight. He taught her history and the lessons no school teaches. "Money is not the reward, Aida," he said one night. "Money is the tool. Character is the reward. Build the character and the money comes and stays. Chase the money without it and it runs through your fingers like water. Do you understand me?" "I understand, Mr. Coker." "Good girl." Quick pause because I want to hear from you. Have you ever stopped to help a stranger when everyone else just kept walking? Or has someone helped you once when they had no reason to? Tell me your story in the comments and let me know where in the world you are watching from. I read every single one. Now back to Aida, because this is where everything turns. For years they were family, not by blood, by choice, which is sometimes the stronger kind. Then, one rainy season, Mr. Coker fell ill. It was the slow kind, the kind that gives you time to say things. Aida did not leave his side. She cooked, she read to him, she sat through the long nights when his breathing was bad and his children were 9,000 kilometers away and not on a plane. They came in the end, one by one, when it was almost over, and Aida stepped back and let them have their father because that was the right thing to do. He passed on a quiet morning with the rain falling soft outside.
Aida grieved him the way you grieve a father, not for what he could give her. She had never once thought about that. She grieved because she had loved the old man, and now the evenings would be empty, and there would be no one left to correct her French or call her a good girl. Weeks later, after the funeral, after his children had flown back to their lives, a lawyer called her. She almost did not go. She thought there had been a mistake. She went. She sat in a small office, and the lawyer, an old friend of Mr. Coker's, slid a document across the desk and told her in plain words what the old man had done. He had left her a fortune, a sum of money, enough to change a life, and more than that, a piece of land, not just any land, a valuable plot in a strategic part of the city, in a location where businesses fought to plant their roots, and on that land, a building already standing, solid, and waiting. Aida read the words 4 times before she believed them. She did not scream. She put her face in her hands in that small office and she cried because the old man had seen her. In all those evenings, while she thought she was only keeping a lonely man company, he had been weighing her, and he had decided that of everyone in his life, the girl who put her goods down in the dirt to lift a stranger was the one who deserved what he had built. There was a letter too, short, in his careful hand. "You never asked me for anything. That is why I'm giving you everything. Character is the reward, Aida. You already have it. Now go and use the tool." She came into money that day, but not by lying down for anyone, the way Selam would later imagine. She had not schemed. She had not seduced. She came into it the oldest and rarest way there is, by being human. Most people who come into money suddenly lose it. They stop working, they confuse the tool for the reward, and within a few years it has run through their fingers, leaving only the shame of having had it and lost it. Aida did not do that. She did what Mr. Coker had trained her to do. She took the land and the building and the money, and she built. She started an import and export company, the very trade the old man had mastered, and poured everything he had taught her into it. Early mornings, long days, no shortcuts. Only now she had a foundation under her feet instead of just her 2 hands. And it grew, slowly at first, the way real things grow, then faster, until it had become a real company with staff and contracts and a name that meant something across continents. She kept the building at the heart of it all, and every morning she walked through those doors thinking of the old man, his letter still in her drawer where she could see it. If you believe that kindness is never truly wasted, that what you give quietly finds its way back to you when you least expect it, do me a favor and type "I agree" in the comments. I think this story is about to prove it. Years passed, and one season, Aida decided it was time to hire new staff for her communications department, people who could carry the company's voice to clients around the world. The interviews were arranged. Hundreds applied. A short list was drawn, a schedule set across several days. And on one of those mornings, 3 young women sat waiting in the reception. One of them was named Selam. Selam was a person at war with the world for a crime the world had never committed. She had always hated people who had things she did not have. Not ordinary envy, real hatred, quiet and personal. If a girl was beautiful, Selam hated her, as though beauty was a theft committed against her. If someone was kind to others for no reason, she did not find it sweet. She found it suspicious, then infuriating, because in her world, nobody did anything for free. And if people were simply liked, if doors opened for them and warmth came to them easily, she could not stand it. She was certain all the way down that such people had cheated somehow, and that she was the one who truly deserved what they had. Years before, she had gone to a youth camp, and at that camp there was a girl, an ordinary, gentle girl everyone simply liked. Nothing about her demanded it. People were just drawn to her, and things came to her easily. Small kindnesses, invitations, the good spot in the shade. It was nothing she did, it was only who she was. Selam could not bear it, and one night, while everyone slept, she quietly gathered a colony of soldier ants and released them onto the sleeping girl's bed. If you know soldier ants, you can already imagine how the girl woke up. Selam lay in her bunk in the dark and felt for the first time in weeks a horrible kind of peace. Because for one night, the girl everyone loved was not being loved. She was suffering, and Selam had made it happen. That was the person sitting in Aida's reception. She had studied mass communications. She was intelligent in the narrow way bitter people often are. She had learned French, and she wore it like expensive perfume, using it not to connect with people, but to sit above them. She had applied for one reason only. The salary was more than she had ever been offered anywhere, enough to change her whole life.
She had no love for the company and no respect for whoever ran it. She had simply decided the job was hers by right, because in Selam's mind, everything good was always meant to be hers by right. She had no idea whose reception she was sitting in. That morning, 3 girls waited: Selam, a girl named Tony, and a third who kept to herself and had the good sense to stay out of what was coming. Selam and Tony had been talking since they arrived, and talking in French. For Tony, it was just conversation. For Selam, it was theater, meant for anyone listening to hear that she was no ordinary applicant. Even her waiting was a performance. Then, a young woman came out of the inner offices and crossed the reception towards the receptionist. Plain blouse, flat shoes, nothing to look at twice. She carried some documents and began speaking quietly with the receptionist, her back to the waiting girls. Tony's eyes followed her, and something clicked. She leaned towards Selam. That woman, that is the owner, that is the CEO. Something cold moved behind Selam's eyes, but she was quick, always quick, and in an instant she was on her feet, her whole face rearranged into warmth, crossing the floor with her hand half extended. "Good morning, ma. You are the CEO. I did not realize. What an honor. I have to say, I cannot wait to work for such an inspirational young woman. A CEO already at your age, it is so rare. I studied mass communications. I am fluent in several languages, so I really believe I would be the perfect fit for a company with international reach. I admire what you are building." She said it all in one bright, breathless rush, making sure to say the last sentence in French. Aida turned her head and looked at her, calmly. She had heard this song before, from many miles, and she recognized it the way you recognize a tune from the radio. "Thank you," she said evenly. "Please be patient. The board will call you when it is your turn." That was all. No warmth to match the performance, just a calm, quiet instruction, and Aida turned back to the receptionist, her back to the girls once more. Selam returned to her seat, and the mask came off. The warmth drained from her face, and by the time she leaned towards Tony, she was already beginning to burn. "You see this girl?" she said in French, low and sharp. "Did you see how she turned her back on me?" "Salam," Tony murmured, glancing around. "Be careful, people are listening." "Listening to what?" Selam laughed contemptuously. "Who in this Nigeria speaks French? Nobody, unless they studied it in school, and even then they cannot follow a real conversation. And that one, there was not a flicker on her face when I said something in French. Nothing. She does not understand a word. If anything, I am helping myself. Let her hear me speaking it fluently. It only proves she should hire me." Tony hesitated, thinking. It was true, she realized, that in all her research on the CEO, she had never come across anything saying the woman spoke French.
"You are right," she admitted. "I never saw anything about her and French. But that was because Aida guarded the gift the old man had given her like something sacred. She did not perform with it. She used it only when it was truly needed, and the rest of the time she kept it quietly in her heart, beside the memory of the man who taught it to her. So Selam, believing she was safe, let it all pour out. "Look at her," she went on, her voice rising in cruelty even as it stayed low. "This is the small chicken, this one looking like a wet rat that I am supposed to call Ma? A girl smaller than me, and I must bow? Selam, no, tell me how a girl this young owns all of this?" Her lip curled, and Tony, trying to calm her, made it worse. "I heard her money came from an old man," she said quietly. "He left her everything, the company, the land, all of it. He was like a father to her, apparently." Something in Selam's face twisted. "An old man," she said it like the words tasted bad. "Of course, you know what that means, Tony. There is only one way a young girl gets an old rich man to leave her his fortune. She warmed his bed, she smiled and lay down and waited for him to die. That is not success. That is a girl who sold herself and got lucky." "You do not know that." I know women like her. Selam's eyes were hard and bright. I have hated women like her my whole life. Handed everything, working for nothing, lucky, and everyone falls over themselves to give them the world while the rest of us fight for scraps. I will never respect her. Never. Tony stared. Then why are you even here? Why apply if you hate the person you would work for? Selam laughed, low and bitter, because the money would change my life. I do not have to like someone to take their salary. I do not have to respect her to collect her check at the end of the month. She glanced at Aida's turned back with pure contempt. Let the little rat sign her papers. I will smile in the interview, I will get the job, and I will laugh all the way to the bank. And that was when Aida turned around. She did not turn quickly. That was what frightened Selam most afterward when she replayed it. Aida turned slowly, the way a person turns when they have been waiting patiently for the exact right moment. And she answered, in French, clear, fluent, perfect French, better than Selam's, the French of someone who learned it from a man who loved the language in long, quiet evenings out of love and not for show. Aida said, the little rat, she said in French, her voice calm and even, understood every single word. The reception went completely silent. The color drained from Salam's face. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Every word she had spoken in the last 5 minutes rearranged itself in her mind and came back to her at once. And her certainty, her peace, her theater, all of it collapsed into one sickening realization. She heard me. She understood everything. I heard you greet me, Aida continued, switching now into clear English so the whole room could follow. And I heard you the moment my back was turned. I heard you call me a chicken, a wet rat. I heard you decide out of nothing that a man I loved like a father, a man I cared for while his own children forgot he existed, was somebody I seduced. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. You looked at my whole life, and of every story you could have imagined, that is the one you chose. Do you know why? Selam could not speak. Because it is the only story you would have written for yourself. Aida's voice was quiet and terrible. People tell you who they are by what they assume about others, and you have just told me everything. Ma, please, I did not mean it. I was only joking, I swear. Please. Selam was on her feet now, and the tears were already coming, arriving right on cue, the way they do for people who have used them before. Save the performance. Aida's voice was still wrapped in calm. I have watched better actresses than you. Please leave my company, now. Ma, please, I need this job. I am begging you. I said leave. She did not shout. She simply looked at her, and there was nothing in that look to argue with. I know your type. I have known it my whole life, and I will tell you the one thing I have learnt. If something hisses like a snake, it does not matter how sweetly it smiles at you afterwards. It is a snake, and I will not tie a snake around the neck of the company I built with my own hands and the blessing of a good man. Now, for the last time, leave. There was nothing left to say. Selam gathered her bag with shaking hands, kept her eyes down, and walked out of that reception as fast as her legs could carry her, past the receptionist, past the third girl staring into her lap, out through the glass doors of the company she would never work for, into a street where no one was speaking French and no one was applauding, and the salary that would have changed her whole life stayed behind her on the other side of a door that had closed forever. She had lost the biggest opportunity of her life. Not because she was unqualified, she was qualified. Not because she could not do the job, she could have done it. She lost it because she was so angry at a world that had done nothing to her, so certain that everyone with something good had cheated to get it, that she could not sit quietly in a chair for 10 minutes without spilling the poison she carried everywhere she went. Now, before I finish this story, I have to ask you something, and I want your honest answer in the comments. Was Aida right? Some of you are fully on her side. You are thinking, good, she got exactly what she deserved. You don't insult someone and then cry when they hear you. If that is you, comment Team Aida. But some of you are wondering, Was it too much? Selam had not actually done anything yet. She only spoke. Was it fair to believe the worst about Selam over a private conversation she never meant to be heard? Should Aida have let her sit the interview and judged her on her work instead? Or was she right to close the door completely on one bad moment? Tell me honestly and let us argue about it in the comments. As for Aida, she did not spend the rest of the day thinking about Selam. She had learned that lesson long ago, that you owe no explanation to anyone who has already decided you don't deserve your blessings. She had nothing to prove. She knew exactly how she earned what she had. She had earned it kneeling in a dirty alley beside a stranger everyone else walked past. She had earned it in 1,000 quiet evenings of listening and learning, and being decent when it cost her time and gave her nothing back that she could see. She went back to work that same afternoon. There were contracts to review and clients across 3 continents waiting on her voice. She sat at her desk. In the building, an old man left her because she never asked him for anything, and she picked up her pen and she kept building, the way she always had, the way she always would. And somewhere across the city, Selam sat in a bus she could barely afford, replaying the sound of perfect French coming out of a mouth she had called a wet rat, learning, far too late, the lessons that would follow her for the rest of her life. That the way you speak about people when you think no one is listening is the truest thing about you. That envy never punishes the person you envy, and that in the end, the world does not belong to the people who are handed everything or to the people who are bitter that they were not. It belongs quietly and stubbornly to the ones who simply refuse to remain human. The end. If this story touched something in you, please do 2 quick things for me. First, tap that subscribe button and join our growing family of story lovers. We're pushing hard to reach 1,000 subscribers, and you, yes you, watching right now, could be the one to get us there. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to us. And don't leave yet. There's another story waiting for you on your screen right now, and I promise you it's just as gripping as this one. Go ahead and cap it. I'll see you there. Until next time, remember, be kind and keep being human.